In January of 2014, I met with HR directors from several different metro districts as we were trying to figure out what do we do about this problem. And we identified what we called a pipeline, which is the top set of boxes, because we said there's a lot of pieces to this. And in every one of these steps of the processes, there are amazing efforts and programs and opportunities, and there are amazing holes and gaps for support and opportunities for individuals of color and American Indians, individuals who want to become teachers in our systems. We saw the work beginning with the high school programs, just as you saw in Roseville, and with the programs of our other educators of color, creating programs to get them into the systems. And then the second step is, what is that experience at the higher ed level? The coursework, the student teaching, the mentoring, getting the degrees, the time, the cost, all of those issues. And then you hit the licensing, the testing and the licensing process and all of the hassles that can come with that. And then you get to the, so how do we find and how do we have the hiring teams that can make the decisions, and how do we match the appropriate individuals with our openings? And finally, how do we have them exist in a welcoming and supportive environment that helps individuals be successful as professionals and want to succeed in the district and want to stay there. So at the time that we created this and brought it forward, our member districts were not quite ready to move this project to the top of the list, but in the fall of 2016, MNEP hired Dr. Rose Chu. And we've been a partner of MNEP's all along, and we were able to hand over the work that we had done and help Rose use that information to launch the work that MNEP is doing with their big, bold goal that was focused on advocating the diverse educator workforce. And MNEP has created the process and in 4 areas called Explore, Become, Grow, and Thrive that align perfectly with the pipeline that we outlined to begin with. We know that in each of these steps, there are opportunities for us as leaders to make decisions that can support individuals in their efforts to become successful educators in our district. We also know that at every one of these steps, we can make decisions that cause the barriers to the success. And in each of these steps, our HR colleagues can be our critical partners in finding very creative solutions, as you've heard from some of these ideas, and equitable opportunities for the students, for our future staff, and our current staff. Last year, I met again with a group of HR directors and said, we're ready to work again and start again in this process. This is a long pipeline. There's a lot of places where you can put energy into it. Where should we start? And the answer was, start at the end. Get the climate in the districts supportive of the individuals who are coming in. Make sure that the hiring processes are equitable. And if what work we've done in the districts makes for an environment that works for the individuals of color and American Indian teachers, it will probably also work for the students because the behavior will be reflected there. And if we don't fix the holes that we have at the end of the pipeline, the amazing, wonderful work and effort that we put in at the beginning isn't going to succeed. So we want to start at the end and get that fixed. So our focus for this last hour is on these 2 steps and the critical role that our HR colleagues can play as our partners in this work. So I will now defer to my colleague, Regina Seabrook.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Lubke. First, I want to thank Minneapolis Public Schools, and I want to thank my friend Stanley for having the courage to be transparent about the lived experiences of teachers of color and American Indian teachers. I also want to thank Minneapolis Public Schools for outlining technical solutions. We, however, are also dealing with a big adaptive challenge. Our organization, Equity Alliance Minnesota, in partnership with MNEEP and our member school districts, including Inver Grove Heights, are working towards how do we meet this adaptive challenge. What you'll hear today are me and my colleagues, Ms. Carroll, Ms. O'Loughlin, and Dr. Chu, talk about the potential and possibility of centering the work with HR directors. More specifically, the importance of the relationships that need to happen between teachers of color and American Indian teachers and HR directors. We believe that HR directors are uniquely positioned to lead this work, and we'll talk a little bit more of that. We also think that as we build the equity leadership capacity of HR directors, we will see more support for an organizational shift toward equity. We will see the evidence of that shift when we see a closing of gaps between intention and action, policy and policy implementation.
Good morning. I'm Michele Carroll. I'm with Inver Grove Heights School District. And first, I want to thank everyone who's spoken today. What a great learning opportunity for me. I've been an HR director a director of an HR program for about 1.5 years, and this has been an incredible learning experience. I do want to speak on Inver Grove Heights specifically of the role that I've played in with recruiting and retaining teachers of color. I was tasked with the operational goal to recommend and develop. I've been tasked with the operational goal to recommend and develop a program to increase teachers of color in Inver Grove Heights. Inver Grove Heights is about 3,600 students. Our student body is almost 50% students of color, and we have less than 1% teachers of color representing our teacher group. So the way I focused, what I have found to be important in the beginning stages of this is the power of conversation, asking questions, and learning how HR can make a difference. I remember sitting with the school board members, looking at this operational goal and having the conversation with them about what would be needed in order to implement such a program, and the eye-opening experience for them of the barriers that will have to be broken. We heard about barriers, about financial barriers, resources that are needed. So those barriers that need to be broken in order to implement such a program. So I'm up against, it's not necessarily but a challenge I have is educating our school board members of how to move forward in implementation of this. So again, the power of conversation. Where do I begin? Where do I start learning about how to implement a Teachers of Color program? And one place I turned to was Metro State. They have the Urban Education Program, and Stanley, you're a part of that. And I went and I met with students there. I learned from students at Metro State about what they're looking for, what they're seeking in a place of work. And I learned, one specifically said she's a student at Metro State. She is in the urban education program because she is from North Minneapolis, and she found how she feels it's very important to give back to North Minneapolis. So you're going to have another another teacher soon that wants to work in North Minneapolis. I also met with and partnered with Equity Alliance. Equity Alliance will speak a little bit about their work and how they're doing to help HR directors as well. But moving on, we've heard a lot about recruiting today, but what about retaining those teachers of color? And HR is in a position to create policies to improve retention. We've heard about some characterized school setting that teachers of color have when they're as they're entering into schools. They feel that there are no resources. They're operating in isolation. There's a lack of autonomy, limited professional development opportunities, few prep breaks, and then there's feeling of negativity from their colleagues. So some things that we have done, or I've done in Inver Grove Heights, is providing a welcoming environment, listening to applicants, teachers, and our current teachers of color. I had an applicant recently for a paraprofessional that this paraprofessional was very interested in becoming a teacher. He's moving outside of the manufacturing industry, and he really wants to be a teacher, but he felt that there were barriers moving in to become a paraprofessional. So he initially turned down the job. But by listening and reaching out to him and of what his needs are, we were able to retain him or hire him in Inver Grove Heights. So then our next step with that applicant will be to learn from him of what he needs in order to continue his education to become a teacher. We also found the importance of focus and affinity groups and providing spaces for them. Career ladders, professional development, as I said, the paraprofessional recruitment, the phone call I had with that paraprofessional applicant, understanding why he decided not to come into Inver Grove Heights and turning his ideas around. And then another step that we've taken, again, very small steps, but I feel like they're significant steps in a future program policies within Inver Grove Heights, is we're collecting data on teachers that are leaving, on paraprofessionals that are leaving our school district. We're talking to them. We're understanding why they may choose to leave. A recent conversation I had with someone that was leaving was she felt like she did not get her performance reviews. She's a probationary student and she needed her probationary review, and she felt she wasn't receiving the feedback that she needed in order to be a successful student. She left after only one trimester in the school district. So as an HR person, I feel my role, again, is the power of conversation, asking questions and learning how HR can help improve this work and make a difference.
So we've had a lot of dialogue about how HR directors can lead this work because how they're uniquely situated. They have the ability to develop the relationships with prospective teachers of color and current teachers of color. They're able to hear the experiences and the nuanced experiences that teachers are having. They can translate those experiences into policy recommendations, and they can help create the infrastructure to implement the policies. Of course, they cannot do all these things alone. The adaptive nature of this challenge is that without the trust of and support of teachers of color and prospective teachers of color, as well as leaders of color, we will continue to move down this path with a lot of decisions being made out of context and without little understanding and without challenge to a dominant frame. And that has proven disastrous for us. So I would really like to reaffirm Michele's point that the relationships are critical. How else can one do proactive problem solving if not through the context of a trusting relationship? And if we break this part down just into some smaller steps, so let's say we have very good trusting and collaborative relationships between HR directors and teachers of color. We now have more information on how to strengthen the recruitment and retention pipeline. Because we have a strengthened recruitment and retention pipeline, we have more confidence from all of our stakeholders in our system. We have more people becoming equity leaders, and we start to see an organizational shift toward everything we aspire and everything we talk about as educators. Big gaps between policy and policy implementation. I'm now going to hand off to my colleague.
Thank you, Regina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paula O'Loughlin. I'm one of the program managers at Equity Alliance Minnesota, and I also had the great honor and high privilege of serving on the school board for Stillwater Area Public Schools the last 4 years. I want to especially thank the students from Roseville Area High School. I wonder if they had to go back to school. I think that their role, our students' role, is going to be critical in this endeavor, and continuing to center and elevate their voices is paramount. So thank you to Roseville Area School District for having them here today. So I want to share a little bit about the world's best workforce. We're all familiar with it. All districts have that as part of their plan. In fact, when we embarked on our new strategic plan, we used the foundational tenets of the world's best workforce so we could have that alignment with our strategies in the work. So the state and federal mandates, as we know, are in place to require districts to address the disparities that do exist in the equitable access to teachers, to highly experienced and highly qualified teachers. In fact, according to the data in the schools right now in Minnesota that are serving the students in the greatest areas of poverty, 15% of those teachers are in their first 3 years of teaching. And the highest poverty schools in our state have nearly double the number of classes taught by teachers who are outside of their content area or specialty. So that has an impact, and that matters. Let's see here. I don't know if I can do that. Oh, sorry, the link there. So one of the things that MDE has some resources talking about creating a teacher equity plan to really bring it to the local level. So that means doing a deeper dive into looking at your teachers. Where are they placed in the classrooms across your district? Who are they in front of? And what do those student demographics look like? And making sure that your most highly qualified teachers are really in front of the learners that need them the most. I know this would never happen, but I have a dream one day that maybe Minnesota, as a united effort toward taking on this problem, that we would take our highest, highly effective and most experienced teachers and put them where we need them in the state. But I think that at the local level, that's something that we do have autonomy over. We do have some agency to do, and so looking at that and taking a critical look at that. When you go to the World's Best Workforce, this site, MDE, there is a link to a toolkit, and this is from the Great Teachers Leaders at American Institutes for Research. And what this tool can do is to help you take some of that data about where your teachers are, where are the students that need those highly qualified, experienced teachers, and help you assess and analyze and communicate that data and help you interpret it to other stakeholders. And then lastly, as Dr. Brown and others have said, to me, I agree, it's really about that retention piece. Last spring I was at a conference and happened to sit next to a woman who recently moved here from the DC area. And she said, as a Black woman, the first thing that I did before I actually moved is I contacted the people that I knew in the Twin Cities area, also people of color, and asked them what their experiences were. Many of them had already left the state and had gone either back to where they had moved or moved on to another part of the country. And she said, I promised my partner that I would give it 3 years because I know that the data is not favorable for people of color, and not only in education, but in other industries as well. And that is very consistent with much of the narrative and the conversations that I've had. So that last one about retaining, this is something I think that we can also engage our school board in terms of how are they making sure that they're really working hard to cultivate a culture that is inclusive, that not only just all students are seen and heard and believed and valued, but our employees and all of our teachers as well. And then the last part that Regina and others have talked about, that adaptive challenge, and I'll just leave you with this. For me personally, what that means is being really honest about my own growth and the own areas that I need to be better at, I need to grow at. Where do I need to deconstruct my own whiteness in this system, and how can I show up better to be an ally to my colleagues, to all of our students, but that real personal work that is hard, that's difficult, it's going to invite you to be vulnerable and uncomfortable, but I truly believe it's necessary if we are to really going to have transformational, enduring change for the cultures of our schools. All right, and then lastly, I want to introduce Dr. Rose Chu. She'll be speaking to the Teach Minnesota 2020 strategy mapping, and this tool can help all districts with that component of the world's best workforce component of equitable teachers.
Could I just step here? Because I'll be hiding behind this, I'm so sure. You will not be able to see me, so. Good morning. Is it still good morning? Good morning, everyone. My name is Rose Chu. I'm Senior Policy Fellow with Minnesota Education Equity Partnership, MANEP. I was here in August speaking to many of you about the overarching project. So today I would like to kind of go deeper a little bit on one of the how we actually do this. So as Jean Lubke talked about the pipeline, I had to say a millennial colleague really got me thinking about why we chose the words we do for this framework. Think about it, words matter, okay? Within education, we have a lot of education speak. We talk about words like induction, which is like, I don't know, electricity, we talk about words that are, the focus is on what we do as educators. So this young woman really helped me think about, she said, you know what, those words that you're using is not exactly very motivating. So thinking about the students that we heard, right? How do we make this this profession, this amazing profession, in a way that's accessible to our students, to our prospective teachers that they don't even know they should be in teaching, nation builders, change makers, changing the words. So that's how we came with these words. And Explore really talks about the fact that this is a very complex system. We need to retain, we need to recruit, we need to do a lot of things. This is very complex. Yet, all of us, just in this room alone, okay, have a part in the solution, okay? We are all part of the solution in some ways. And so if you look at who the partners are to date, some are farther along than others, but the idea is that we're gonna have a tool to map out how you are part of the solution of the larger system. That's huge, because otherwise this seems so huge that we can't solve. This is a very complex issue, okay? Oh, how do I do this? Just push a button? Oh, no, oh. To the right. Oh, there you go. Technology. And I'm the engineer in the room, is that terrible? It's scary, isn't it? Yeah, so you have heard me talk about strategy mapping. I don't know whether I'll get to click on the, yeah, you wanna give it a try? What I want you to see is an actual map out, very mature project. And know that the platform is actually created by a local social entrepreneur in Golden Valley. And he's been doing this work with the health sector across the nation. And what he has done is to say, we have a complex issue in, say, the opioid crisis. How do we connect the dots in a way that is beyond, we're gonna like capture everybody's project in a report. Okay, we have done that for many, many years. Not the reports are not important, but I think what he has done is to, I'm gonna use this word, re-engineer how we collaborate, how we can actually help each other see what we are doing and collectively have some alignment. So, oh, that's one way to do it. Yeah, www, there you go. Okay. And the reason I'm gonna show you is that our project right now is kind of, we don't have the critical mass. So the partners have said that we don't want to show that to the public just yet because we are very small, but this is like 5 years in the making. So this project, if you go down to just click on get started, there you go. There was a group of maybe 30 partners that United Way funded in Colorado. And each one of them is doing different things. And sometimes we all think that just because we are doing different things, you know what, we are locally controlled in Minnesota, we can work together. But part of the United Way requirement was that they had to work together and then using the strategy map to come up with what is it that they want collectively to do. So just let's click on education for a minute, which is the one on the left. You can't see it. There you go. Yeah. And what they did, the partners came together and say, you may not be able to see it, is to say what are the strategies that will help the county be a county that will really move forward in education. And then if you go down, I'm doing this, and you have this link so you can examine it. If you keep going down, the partners, through a process that I will introduce today to all of you, they actually came up with this dashboard or a scorecard of how they have collectively been able to move. Okay? Just so that you know, in Minnesota, mapping out the strategies of teacher diversity along the Explore, Become, Grow, and Thrive framework is the first in the nation. It's the first in the nation. So the dream I have is that the more partners can come on board, the more we'll get a better sense at not just a reporting to each other and sharing. We could actually be accountable and say, how many students did we reach in the intro to education classes, for example? Okay, how many did we actually collective between Minneapolis and St. Paul, Inver Grove, Roseville, Hopkins? How many actual teachers did we keep? Okay, or how many of them actually stay a certain time? So this is how we would be able to move together. So it's a big project. It's not going to be over tomorrow. So I invite you to be part of this project. So I guess I have the control now. Sorry. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's get back to. So on your table, I want to say something else too. It's that MDE, because they are providing the grant for the Grow Your Own, Elliot Brueggemann, who just left, and I'm going to be working with, I'm going to remember his name, Tyler Livingston. Many of you know him from the school support. They are very interested to say, how do we develop, and they already started developing like a rubric of what is it that they need to measure. And some of it is legislative, right? How can we do it so that we could create a learning community? And so they are very interested to be part of the strategy mapping and say, could we do this somehow visually? All right, so that we could actually bring people together and we could actually connect and say, together, what have we done? Because what happened was that Ellie literally told me, she said, you know, Rose, I know what each of them do because I read all their report. It's great work. So I say, so where are we going to know what we are doing together as a group? She couldn't answer because it's all in her head. That's when she thought that this is a great way to do it. So what I'm going to do is show you the framework. And you actually have a copy on your table that is kind of a blank copy that has like objective, measure, benchmark, target, action, and priority dates. Okay, so that's what we call the OMTA framework. We don't have a nicer name, unfortunately. You have done exercise like that, whether it's SMART goals, whether it's theory of change. There are many ways of doing this, but in this particular framework that the founder have done is using the idea of objective, measure, target, and action to capture this in a technology platform that is in the cloud. So it could have as many partners as you want. In Indiana, they had like over 200 partners with over 2,000 strategies captured in that map, okay? And I'm gonna then show you example, and then we would love for you to think about at your table, thinking of the world best workforce. You are already doing that. All of you are doing some work in teacher diversity. Think of one of the initiatives. Think about how that could map onto this framework. So this is an example in everyday life. Okay, it came from a health. What I don't have is that you could almost see that the strategy is that you want people to be healthier, right? Using biking. So what is your objective? You want to increase biking and walking to work.
What are the measures? How do you know that you are doing something about that? And what are your targets? Where are you heading? All right? And so that's why you also have baseline. Where are we now and where need to head? And then what are the things that you are actually going to do to achieve those targets? So that's a very simple example. And then this one I'm going to show you is an actual example of one of our partners, which is Breakthrough Twin Cities. I think that's what they're called. Breakthrough Twin Cities. They work with college students in the summer to try out teaching. Okay, try out teaching. And what they realize is that they could be more intentional in terms of who they want to recruit and who those fellows will be. And so what was interesting is that they are one of the early adopters, and this process has really helped them think about what is it that they want to do. Where are they now and where would they want to go, and what are the specific actions. And by being a partner, what that means is that I have many of these partners will come together and we talk about our progress. We talk about our challenges. And not that it's very similar to a convening like that where you're sharing, but because of the fact that you have put a scorecard together, so this would turn into a scorecard, that you have something that you consistently go back to. All right? So that beside talking about the challenges, you could actually say, you know what, this particular measure was really hard to achieve. We didn't make any progress in 3 months. That's okay. That's okay. That's part of the learning community and the collaborative that I'm trying to create. So hopefully this gives you a flavor of what happens when the partners come together. So I actually, which I did not put on this slide, we actually have already the dates of the quarterly meetings that we have for the rest of the year. And the first one is going to be February, it's a Friday, February 8th, yeah, at 9:30. And then we usually do 2 meetings each for the quarter, just to give people an option. So I have actually the MANIP annual report at the back. If you want to read more about the project, you can, and so it's, you can take one of those. And then my card is back there, and I also have something that is very clear today in the talking around how do we actually elevate the profession so that the young people that we saw actually want to be in teaching, right? That this is giving voices to our teachers, our parents, all of you who have stories of those who have imprinted on us something about teaching that we never forget, right? All our life, we just never forget about those stories. So it's just a way to counter the story. So grab that. If you're interested to be part of the mapping collaborative, this is a very initial list. I have a list of prospective who are interested, and it's just a matter of kind of getting through the process of coming to the meetings, understanding what it is that you will need to be part of it. You could be starting with one strategy. It's like, we're going to start with this strategy, we're going to go through the process, and you actually see yourself on your map and on a scorecard. And eventually, when there are more and more partners, the partners are telling us that we would love to meet as an explore group. We would love to meet as a become group. We would love to meet as a grow group and a thrive group. Then maybe we could actually develop some programs together, leverage each other's asset, and then look at who's still missing. And then also look at what are some things that we can measure together in order to see that we are getting somewhere, okay? So that's my invitation to you to join us. And you have my contact information. Would love to hear from you. And then I'm going to let Regina end with an invitation also.
So if you are interested in being part of this broader collective impact to recruit and retain teachers of color, please consider partnering with us at Equity Alliance Minnesota. We are going to be developing and implementing a HR professional learning series to build equity leadership capacity in our HR directors, specifically focused on the recruitment and retention of teachers of color.